Hey everyone, I'm Pastor Alec,
I'm Eli.
and we're talking through First Kings. Still going here.
Yeah.
So Eli, what do you have for me this week?
Well, I actually finished up First Kings.
Wow, finished up
Reading,
First Kings.
yeah.
Okay.
So I started over at 18.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because we left off at 17 last week.
Right, yeah.
Right. Okay.
So looking at verse 8.
Yep.
18 verse 8. Yes, he replied, "Go tell your master Elijah is here. What have I done wrong?" asked Obadiah, "that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be put to death. As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. And whenever a nation or kingdom claimed you were not there, he made them swear they could not find you. But now you tell me to go to my master and say, Elijah is here. I don't know where the Spirit of the Lord may carry you when I leave you. If I go to tell Ahab and he doesn't find you, he will kill me."
Okay. Yeah. All right. So you get Obadiah and Ahab,
Yeah.
or Obadiah and Elijah talking. All right.
So before this, was Elijah present, like working miracles?
Well,
and
yeah.
work-
I remember at the very end of the last time Elijah Elijah kind of shows up with a bang here. He appears in chapter 17
Yeah.
and predicts a drought.
Right.
And-
And that's when he disappeared.
Yeah, and
Okay.
nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Like nobody
Yeah.
nobody wants. And so he he predicts the drought. He gets everyone angry with him because remember these kings, they don't, in their minds, I think they sometimes think the prophets are like sorcerers,
Yeah.
like that they're that they are the ones who are deciding everything. And I mean, you kind of, right, so if we go back to 17, it kind of does look that way. Now, Elijah the Tishbite of Tishba in Gilead said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, there shall be neither dew nor rain these years, except by my word." So it kind of, to Ahab, because he's saying this is like a punishment to Ahab, it kind of sounds like, well, if Elijah decided it, then that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And so you get to Ahab's very upset with Elijah right now.
Now, was it Ahab later on who didn't want to speak to Elijah because he had nothing but bad to say about him or evil?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you have this whole thing between Ahab and Elijah that takes place for like the rest of Ahab's reign.
Yeah.
And of course Ahab's wife is Jezebel.
Right.
And she doesn't like Elijah either, right? And Jezebel isn't even an Israelite. She's like a Phoenician from Tyre and Sidon. She's from the northern coast there. And so yeah, it's this, you've got Obadiah. He's kind of working in the court, and Elijah's been on the run this whole time. He stayed with the widow and raised her son.
Right.
And then in chapter 18, verse 1, after many days, the word of the Lord came to Elijah in the third year, saying, "Go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." It's like, okay, well. And so Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria, and Ahab called Obadiah, who was over the household. Now Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. And when Jezebel cut off the prophets of the Lord, Obadiah took 100 prophets and hid them by 50s in a cave and fed them with bread and water. And Ahab said to Obadiah, "Go through the land to all the springs of water and to all the valleys. Perhaps we may find grass and save the horses and mules alive and not lose some of the animals." So they divided the land between them to pass through it. And Ahab went in one direction by himself, and Obadiah went in another direction by himself. And as Obadiah was on the way, behold, Elijah met him. Right? So Ahab wants Obadiah to go find Elijah and say, "All right, you got to stop this drought."
Right.
And in the meantime, they're going out looking for like grass, like any water,
Yeah.
right? And as they're looking around, they split up, and Obadiah, he runs into Elijah,
Right.
right? And so that's where this, what you just read, it all kind of takes place there in that context. But it also seems like Obadiah, he's faithful to Yahweh, but for
Right.
some reason, Ahab and Jezebel think it's worthwhile to have him around,
Okay.
even though they are not faithful to
Right,
God.
right.
And
Now-
also Obadiah's got all these prophets that he's hiding from them so they don't kill him.
Yeah. Yeah. So now Ahab didn't know about that.
I guess not.
Right.
Doesn't seem
I was
to.
wondering how Ahab. Well, okay. First of all, does Ahab believe in God?
No.
Okay. He's just like all over the place.
Well, think about it. They're in the north. So
Right.
all this time with the northern kingdom, and the northern kingdom, they apostatized a long time ago, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so they've left, and so he has no problem just going after other gods.
Okay.
Like it's a non-issue for him.
Because I was wondering why, he was married to Jezebel if Jezebel was killing all its prophets. But
Yeah, and
that
and
makes
you
sense
really
now.
see that Jezebel seems to be she seems to be the mind behind it all.
Yeah.
Right, so-
like Macbeth almost.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, like Lady Macbeth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. Like she seems to be, and Ahab is the kind of the public figure, but but Jezebel, she's the one that is really going after Elijah. There's a great parallel to this in the New Testament with Herodias and Herod and John the Baptist.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So John the Baptist is kind of like the Elijah,
Right.
I mean, Jesus says as much, and Herod is entertained by John the Baptist. Herodias hates him.
And that's Herod's wife, right?
Yeah, that's Herod's wife. Well,
Yeah.
she was the wife of his brother.
Okay.
And so he kills his brother and takes his brother's wife. And John is telling everyone, he's mocking them for this, and he's
Right.
calling them out to repent of their sins because of this.
Yeah.
So she really doesn't like
Okay.
John, right? Because John is telling everyone what happened.
Right.
And so remember, she's the one that when John has been arrested by Herod and he's in prison, she is the one who gets her daughter to ask for John's head on a silver platter.
Yeah.
She's the
remember
one
that
that
now.
does it. And actually, it upsets Herod, but he has to do it.
Right.
It upsets him because, not because he loves John, but he's entertained by him.
Right, yeah.
Right? He thinks
Ruins
it's
his fun,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. And,
That was his reality TV.
yeah, right. Yeah, in some sense it was. And so I think there's a lot of parallels between, at the end of the day, what's going to happen with Elijah and Ahab and Jezebel is it's going to be a very bad ending for Ahab and Jezebel.
Right.
Right. Very bad. And Elijah, of course, is going to be taken up in a flaming chariot to heaven. Right.
Yeah.
But
And then right beside Jesus at the
well, yeah, that's right. Right
Transfiguration,
beside Jesus at the
yeah.
Transfiguration, but what's interesting is that when you go to the New Testament, look at the parallel. In the New Testament, it's like Jezebel finally gets what she wants.
Right.
She gets Elijah's head on a silver platter, except
Yeah.
it's not Jezebel, it's
Herodias.
Herodias, and it's not Elijah, it's John the Baptist.
Right.
And so I think it's a very interesting
Yeah, I was gonna say,
parallel.
that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, my next question from chapter 19,
Yep.
verse 11.
Okay. 1911.
Okay, so the Lord said, "Go and stand out on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by."
Yeah.
Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. Was there any significance of the Lord not being in the fire? Or the,
I think there is a significance there, yeah, because, all right, so he's on Mount Horeb. He's on the run now from Jezebel and Ahab. Right? He knows they want to kill him. He's on the run from them, and he goes as far as he possibly can. So they're in the northern kingdom. He goes through Judah, past Judah, down south past the Negev desert, all the way to the Sinai Peninsula where Mount Horeb is.
Okay.
Because Mount Horeb, that's just another name for Mount Sinai.
Okay.
So he goes to Mount Sinai. He's hiding in a cave. It's interesting because when Moses was on Mount Sinai, God hides Moses in a cave.
Yeah.
And you kind of wonder, what if it was the same cave, right? Rock of Ages cleft for me. Let me hide myself in. It's just like, so remember when Moses is on this mountain and encounters God, God comes to him in this fiery whirlwind. Right,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like chaos, and the floor is like, like precious stones, right? And it's emerald floor, and it's just this wild, almost apocalyptic experience
Right.
for Moses. And so Elijah's on the run from Ahab and Jezebel. He doesn't really know where else to go. He's not going to be welcomed in Jerusalem, like maybe
Right.
not, but those aren't really his people.
Okay, yeah.
right? That's a different. I mean, the time is past. It's a different kingdom now, and so he doesn't really know where to go. I think so. He just goes to Horeb because that's where Moses interacted
Right.
with God. So why not,
Yeah.
right? And so he's just sitting there waiting there, and it's interesting, right? So yeah, so he goes, go out and stand on the mount before the Lord, and behold, the Lord passed by, and there's a great strong wind tore the mountains. And you think, what does that mean? A strong wind, strong enough to tear the mountains.
Right.
Okay, and broke in pieces the rocks, but before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind, and after the wind an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake, and after the earthquake a fire, but the Lord is not in the fire. All right, and so it's like, all right, so all these, like the Mosaic experience, he's getting it, but the Lord is not in those things
Right.
now.
Okay.
Like the opposite of Moses.
I didn't put that together.
And then, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And if you look, my ESV has a footnote here, or a sound, a thin silence. And really, the Hebrew text there, I think it's kind of idiomatic. Like, what is a low whisper? Is it somebody speaking? I think the best translation of that is actually a deafening silence.
Okay.
Like, it's the kind of silence you can cut with a knife,
Yeah.
right? Like it is a noticeable silence. So it doesn't mean there's no words being spoken, but it's just, why is it so calm?
Right.
After all
Almost
this
like a
chaos.
silence you can hear.
Yes, almost a silence you can hear, right? That's why a deafening silence.
Right,
It's
yeah.
a silence that somehow drowns out everything else, right? And when Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" And I think it's interesting. God is asking, why are you here?
Right.
Like with Moses, remember with Moses, Moses is just, shepherding his sheep, living with the Midianites, and he's near the mountain and he sees a bush that's burning and it's not
Right.
being burnt, right? And so he approaches it and God speaks to him, and then God directs him to come back with the people of Israel.
Okay.
So
yeah.
after they leave Egypt, they cross the Red Sea, and of course God is the one making it all happen with the plagues and the parting of the sea and all that stuff, the pillar of cloud by day, the pillar of fire by night, all that, and he's guiding them, and so God says, "Come, you're going to come back to this mountain." Right? And so he does, and he goes, fiery whirlwind, receives the law, this stuff. He doesn't say that to Elijah.
Right.
Elijah just shows up. And he's, what are you doing here? What are you looking for? Are you looking for
Right.
me? And I just think it's so interesting. And he tells them, they have a conversation, and God tells him to go back, and he gives them all these instructions, right? It's like, you're not just going to stay here. You're going to go back, and you're going to perform your role as a prophet,
Right.
right? And
honestly, Elijah, I mean, obviously he was scared, but he might have been a little ashamed because it says he put his cloak over his face and walked out.
well, why? Shame maybe, but why might he put his cloak over his face? He wrapped his face in his cloak. Why would he do that? What happened with Moses? Remember, in the same place, Moses asks God, can I see your glory? And God tells him, if you
Hey,
see
we
my
were
glory.
blind, yeah.
No, not
Wait.
blind, not blind. Well, you're close, right? He says, I want to see your glory. God says, you can't do that or else you're going to die. So I'll let you see the backside of my glory. So he does, and then Moses comes down the mountain, and what's going on with his face? It's shining.
Oh.
It's shining.
Okay.
And so when he talks to people, he now has to cover his face.
Okay.
He has to put a veil over his face.
Right.
Right? And so Elijah, he might know what he's getting himself into. He's going to cover his face first.
Right.
Because he doesn't know what's going to happen.
Okay.
Right? I mean, I think that's the
Okay.
best.
I didn't know
He
that
puts
about Moses.
Yeah, and then when he goes into the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle, maybe the same place, maybe not. He lifts the veil over his face to meet with God, and then he covers his face again.
Yeah.
So Moses was covering his face in perpetuity,
Right.
right? And so Elijah, You know,
Okay.
he's going to cover his face now. He's on the
Right.
same mountain, the same
Yeah.
experience, the same. And actually, it's really important because Paul even talks about this in 2 Corinthians that when that Jesus has actually removed the veil, so
Okay.
you can behold Jesus and not and you won't die and you don't have to cover your face.
Right.
And he actually says that Jesus removed the veil, like the veil over Moses' face. He like removes the veil from our hearts.
Okay.
Right, and we do get to have the full revelation of God in Jesus Christ.
Right.
Now, you know what that's called when Moses' face is shining? That's a halo. That's what a halo
yeah.
is.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So it's when you behold the glory of God and your face is shining.
Right.
It's not like a thing that goes around your head or something.
Yeah.
Right. It's like it's your face is shining, and so that's why people, saints are. They
Glowing.
are haloed,
Yeah.
They're glowing because they've, they're like seeing the presence of God.
Right.
So like Jesus, when he's depicted as even as he's born, he's got like a halo, right?
Yeah.
And that's so
Yeah.
it's not something that goes around your head. It's your face emanating this light,
Okay.
right? And so halos have been depicted very, differently throughout time,
Right.
and yeah, and nowadays now the way that it's done today is like not even you wouldn't even recognize it. Like it's not even
too far
recognizable.
apart.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's kind of cool.
Yep.
Damn, that's something I really never knew.
yeah, good.
It's shocking me. Okay, so in 19 verse 15 through 18.
Okay, 19:15 through 18.
Well, we read 15, but I'll go ahead and read it again.
Well, it's the instructions,
But,
right?
Yeah. Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael, king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat from Abel Meholah, to succeed you as prophet. Jehu will put to death any who escape the sword of Hazael. And Elisha will put to death anyone who escaped the sword of Jehu. And then right here is where my question is. Yet I reserve 7,000 in Israel, all whose knees have not bowed down to Baal, and all whose mouths have not kissed him.
Yep.
So reserve, is that like for an army? Or just to
Oh,
rule
interesting.
over?
For an army. Well, I mean, that's a good question. It could be, but I think the reading that's most obvious to me, like immediately, is that there are people that God has prevented from going after false gods,
Okay.
Baal.
Yeah.
So it's like not all of Israel is lost because
Right.
remember he's mourning the fact he thinks he's the only one.
Right.
He's the only one that still believes in Yahweh. And God says, no, there's 7,000 in Israel.
Okay. And then